Sir.
Yeah, my question has to do with marijuana. You had came out and indicated that marijuana is against the law, which I also agree. But what about effects of employers who have people who want to smoke marijuana and it's against their company instructions? What's your feeling on how they should approach that?
Well, and I'm prevented by law from giving legal advice outside of my duties as the county attorney. But what I'll say is that illustrates another problem that we have with how the initiative was drafted. Because within the initiative, it says that if you are a qualified patient, you can't be fired because you're using marijuana. You're given certain rights and protections. But, and here's where we wind up, and if anybody wants to ask a question about preemption and the interaction of federal and state law, I'll answer that. But what happens there is that you've also got some employers who have federal contracts, and they're required to have a drug-free workplace. So we've now put employers between a rock and a hard spot where can they fire someone because they're in violation of a federally mandated drug-free workplace? Or are they prevented from doing it because someone's a qualified cardholder? Now that's the generic thing. Let me make it a little bit more difficult. What if that employer and their federal contract is for a defense contract and they're working on parts for a guidance missile and the employer is concerned about whether or not that person's coming hungover or whether or not that they may still be under the effects of using marijuana in the morning or what have you? Now, there's a whole other set of provisions that says obviously if someone is impaired on the work site that they don't have protections, they can be terminated for that. But we now get into that area where we've got that conflict between the initiative and then federal regulations and requirements. Are we as Arizona going to then put employers in a circumstance where they've got to start refusing federal contracts? It's another issue that we have. I'm not in a position as the county attorney to be involved in any enforcement action with respect to that or interact with businesses, but that's one other issue.
You know, like I'm a school bus driver, I get drug tested 3 to 5 times a year. So things like that.
Right. Well, and even on that point too, under our state DUI laws, if you have the metabolite of marijuana in your system while you're driving, you're DUI.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether or not you're a qualified patient.
And as a chronic user, someone would probably have it in their system.
Oh, they could. Well, it can stay in your
It can stay
system
there
for
for a
upwards of
while.
30 days and beyond.
Right.
So yeah. So even if you're a qualified patient and you are using, and I know I'm inviting more questions, but even if you're using right now, as the Attorney General's opinion put it, we decriminalize possession or use. I disagree with the interpretation, but that's the Attorney General's opinion. So we're not prosecuting people for possession or use if they have a qualified patient card. But even under those circumstances, if you're driving with a metabolite, you're still subject to a misdemeanor prosecution.
Right.
So, I mean, even on that, like, you just filed something with medical marijuana, and do you work for the state of Arizona or the federal government?
No, and great
Or the
question.
citizens of Arizona?
Sure, great question.
For the voters. For the us voters, yeah.
Sure. Do I work for the citizens of Arizona or the federal government? Obviously, I work for the citizens of Maricopa County.
Sure.
Because we have Supreme Court case law that the federal government cannot mandate executive officials at the state level enforce federal law.
Right.
You can't do that.
Right.
So where I am at on this, and I know this is what you want to get to.
Go on.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
My oath of office begins with, I, William Gerard Montgomery, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will, to the best of my ability, carry out the duties of the office of Maricopa County Attorney. So help me God.
Sure.
I paraphrased a little bit of that.